Welcome to the Light True Crime. So, resuming my coverage of the David Burke Preliminary Hearing from being in the courtroom myself and going over my notes. This is going to take part of from Friday, June 24th, and I made two videos covering the testimony of the man show here, who is Dr. Grant Ho, and I made those during the lunch break. So if you'd like to go in chronological order, you can review those two videos first, and because I was able to get that out during lunch break. And that went over all of his testimony regarding the autopsy and the wounds and everything there. So those were already recorded if you want to go see those first. Now I'm going to give my warning about the content we're about to discuss for the rest of day 4 of what occurred. The rest of the content that we're going to hear about is we're going to hear about specific details of the CCM photos that were found on the iPhone in the home. And we're also going to go into all of the text message exchanges that they had. And I wrote so much down. I have so much to go through. I was writing furiously to get every single bit of text message and everything. And there's a lot of hard details to listen to. So I'm giving this warning now about this content. Please take breaks. This is difficult. Also, it's been scientifically proven that playing Tetris for 30 minutes after some trauma and stuff can help with your brain. So do that. That's why I took a day in between posting everything from Friday. I took time for my mental emotional health, and I also tried playing some Tetris, so we'll see if it helps. But these are really hard details to listen to, so I don't want to ignore that when we cover. So let's get right into the coverage from this LAPD detective who really shed a lot of light on this case. So this here is the sketch image of Detective Corey Farrell. He's in the LAPD Robbery Homicide Unit. He's worked with LAPD for 28 years and been in robbery homicide for 9 years. And he works with Detective Josh Byers as his partner, who has also been involved in this case. Now, they talk about the search warrants when they went to 1368 Doheny Place, and that's where they recovered an iPhone 15. And this search warrant occurred on September 17th, 2025. They were in the upstairs den loft area when they found this phone, and they determined that it belongs to David because the ending numbers 0571 have correlated to him during this entire course of investigation. Now, he was asked how many people were living at this home, and he said that David is definitely living in this home, and that they also noticed in another bedroom Robert Morgenroth. His luggage and items were in another room, kind of identifying that seems like he's there a lot, don't know, living there, but his items were all in a separate bedroom in that home that they were able to find. They also found a passport of David's, his Texas driver's license. They also found that he had a North Carolina fake 21-year-old license. So that would have made him of age maybe to get into some clubs or bars or anything that he had. He had selfies of himself on this phone. Also on this phone were photographs of bank accounts, credit cards, his mother's credit card, and another parking ticket for the Tesla from back in March. So he was explaining that these items were found on the phone, which also helped correlate and connect it back to that this was David Burke's phone and nobody else's. Now they started showing photographs that were found on the phone, and there's numerous photographs of David and Celeste together. One of the things they showed us was David, and I'm trying to see, like, this is where the sketch artist tried to do some photos in the background. David was holding up a ring, so like an engagement ring. Hold on, I've got a ring around here. He was holding a photo like just like this of him holding a ring, and then you can kind of see in the back in this sketch they did this like high five motion and with their two hands where Celeste is wearing the ring with the David tattoo in red ink. And you can also tell when this picture was shown, you can see how small and tiny Celeste's hand is, again, as a child compared to David's. You're looking at a child's hand with this man's name tattooed on her finger and a engagement type ring that they had. And let me show you a photo because we have a photo previously that was released about this. So this was the next photo that was actually shown of Celeste's hand, the tattoo, and the ring that she had. And some may have seen this before. It was released out on Reddit that it was found. And I made a note as well during this time that this was the first time David started being incredibly active when it came to talking to his lawyer on the side, you know, like hushing over, making notes to her. And he does have a notepad that he's able to take notes on in front of him. And just as a comment, this notepad does not go back with him to his jail cell. He's not allowed to have anything with him, so the lawyer has to hold on to his notes. But he was all of a sudden making tons of notes and seemed very active regarding the rest of the testimony of the day. And this is the first time he ever was having this type of reaction versus just sitting there and not really having emotion and stuff like that. So let's keep going on about the rest of the testimony. They showed photos of David and Celeste that were in the Tesla with her hair being dyed red. There's one where it was curly and one where it was straightened. And she had that bandana with the black and gold on it. And that's what this photo in the far right is behind the detective's shoulder was trying to show. So it had these photos. And again, they're together driving and riding around in David's Tesla. There was another photo that was then shown of David and Celeste kissing in bed. It was from their necks up. They were kissing, and then another one they were making like a kissy face together. The next thing that we saw was a photo of Celeste and David on FaceTime, and there were 3 screenshots shown of this. So it essentially showed, again, if you're talking to someone on FaceTime or on video from your phone and you take a screenshot of that conversation, right? 2 of them had David in the main background and Celeste in like an upper corner window talking to him, and another one had Celeste in the main background and David in an upper corner video speaking to him, and they were shown in different locations. So this was showing the amount of communication that they had talking to each other. Then they went into talking about, the detective said there's numerous photos that were corroborating a sexual relationship. And for warning, these next parts, I'm going to have to try to work with my wording in this because we know it's a social media platform and I have to make some changes to how I communicate these sensitive items. The detective was telling the courtroom that these numerous photos showed that they were engaged in intercourse, oral by each and on one another. They had photos of privates of the P, the V, and bare breast photos. Now, he also verified that you can tell this is David's bedroom in the background at the 1368 Doheny Place address, to make that clear. There's also many photos that were in the phone that show not Celeste's face, but they have her dyed red hair in them. So they're able to really kind of tell that that was her. They also mentioned the lock screen. On the lock screen of the phone was the 2 of them in an embrace where neither had clothing on the top half of their body. So, you know, when I think of that, when you put that on your lock screen too, I was wondering who is around with this phone, because your lock screen, people see that. So how did not friends or anyone else not see that and have questions or know who this girl was if you're putting that directly on your lock screen? Just my own personal thoughts that came up when they were talking about that. He had everything right out there. It doesn't seem like he was hiding it as much as it seems when you put that on your phone lock screen. Okay, this next part is going to get very specific. We're going to talk about the CSAM material that was on the phone. And now the detective talked about a date, June 24th, 2024, connected to a photograph, and defense objected, saying, how does he know it's that date? And this essentially came from the metadata connected to the photograph. So the judge did allow this and explained to defense on cross-examination. They can try to inquire more about it. The detective talked about how this information, once he started to see these graphic photos, he had to talk to the LA District Attorney Cybercrimes Unit for child sexual abuse. He gave them the phone and asked them to flag any material to filter before discovery was made for counsel because of the sensitive nature of content that was suddenly discovered on this phone. He said that they had items extracted and segregated as child sexual abuse material, which showed them engaged in numerous sexual acts. Now, just a quick note, regarding the Celeste mother and father and their attendance during the day. They were not there in the beginning of the day at all for any of the autopsy reporting. When they did come in after lunch to try to start listening to this, when they got to like the photos of excuse me, Celeste, with the ring on and that kind of stuff, and seeing these photos of her with him, the mother was breaking down crying, and Beth did lean over and express her apologies and was kind of saying that there's going to be a lot more that's about to come out. Again, we're talking about the CCM they're going to talk about, and at this point, the family's attorney and the mother and father did leave the room, and her mother was just so upset and crying. That's really heartbreaking to watch. You have to understand, you have this family in the room, and the monster that took advantage of their child and mutilated her, and took them out of their lives, is sitting so close to them. And then seeing all these things that happened, it's so heavy to feel those emotions from them. And they're in a part of a group of people that you never want to be in, of losing their child in this type of way. Now, what happened next in the testimony, and this photo describes exactly what kind of happened. They were going to describe the CCM photos. Naturally, due to the content of what they are, they're not going to show them. And they explained that defense was able to see them as well in a separate room. And they were you see Beth has the blue dress. She gave a copy to the judge and then had them available to show the detective here, and the defense is able to stand behind and just kind of observe as well, so that they're ready for their cross-examination. So that's how this happened. This was exactly the scene where she stood there with the photo. And then what happened is I numbered it as we were going through, because I have like multiple pages here on this. The detective went through and described in detail 45 CSAM photos, because that's how they can do the testimony in the courtroom. I'm not going to read every single one of what was done to a child, but I'm going to go through and give you some of the summary of some of these photos to the best of my ability. But these are really hard to listen to. Okay. And we emphasize that at this age, Celeste was 13 years old when this is going on. They have photos of David performing oral on her, both with no clothing on his bed in the bedroom. They had multiple photos of him holding his, his pee, I'll just say that. And they would also describe it as being African American, so to distinguish and connect it to him. They had described him holding it too with white things, substances. You can use your imagination, fluid, that in multiple photos as well, that was, on his hand in his thing. They had photos of her performing X on him. They talked about, this was interesting because I don't know who it was. Photo number 9 was a man sitting on a couch and David standing behind that man fully nude with his arms up in the air. But they didn't say who it was on the couch. There was photos of close-ups of both private areas. Many were described of David holding his thing, it being, Eiffel Towered, I guess you could say, up, not flaccid, and holding his underwear down. There's close-ups of the breasts. There's David with his head laying on top of her private area. And there's also images where you might not see her face, but you see her red hair, identifying that it's Celeste. There is, I'm not even going to talk about these. They talked about, again, that screen lock photo was found in there. And they also have like some dates. They describe Sunday the June 23rd, 11:44 a.m. Like they described specific times and dates of some of these photos from the metadata that connected to them. And again, these were all happening at the Doheny Place home and able to show the background, the bedroom there. They had, God. I mean, I don't want to go. I'm just gonna be honest. Like some of these details are just, I'm not gonna say, and I'm sure people will have the transcripts after and go through them. But I'm just trying to, like, all of this doesn't need to be said. But yeah, he also noted, like, at one point he has got the black star on his forehead, that sticker that we see in multiple photos. But I'm not gonna really describe the rest of them. They were just horrific. They were all about engaging in acts and stuff and the things he had, just verifying these CSAM charges that he has, and then he's with a child, okay, a child. And the text messages are going to kind of clarify some more of these photos, the context and stuff of what was talked about. And that's what we're going into next is text messages. These text messages they had from the iCloud, and the detective talked about how they corroborate and support these CSAM photos that he was describing. The first communication in the iCloud data was on August 8th, 2022. That is when Celeste was 11 years old. Okay? It verifies 11 years old, that communication. Then the last communication they had, he identified, was April 23rd, 2025. She was known as Cel in his contacts on the phone, so CEL. That's how she was listed in the phone. Now, the text, the subject matter, they talked about it being like past and future, how they were sexual in nature. There's emergency contraception discussed, pregnancy, transportation back and forth to the Lake Elsinore home. And from November 2023 to March 2025, there were sexual conversations in these texts the entire time. Now, people have asked about this Plan B photo that was kind of sketched in the background, and that's what we're about to talk about. This happened on June 2024, where Plan B photo, David is driving the Tesla, and then Celeste is clearly in the passenger seat of the Tesla, and her hand is holding the package. Like say this is the package, like this as a passenger, and then taking the phone of the Plan B, and you can see David driving. So just her hand is in it and just holding that Plan B. And this came from the iCloud. Now going into the text messages, it's going to start at November 25th, 2023. So let's get started on text messages. November 25th, 2023 at 10:14 p.m. Celeste said currently, and it was misspelled, but it was currently manifesting my period because I refuse to have kids. David replied, "Did you miss your date? You should start tracking. Use the Flow app." So the Flow app, if those who don't know, you can track your period and understand when you ovulate. He's telling this to a 13-year-old child. Okay, I know this, we're at like 20 minutes and my phone will have a freak out on TikTok if I go longer. So I'm going to post this one and I will see you all in the next update, continuing on with the text message information. So again, thank you for tuning into the light. As I say here, what happens in the dark will always come to the light. And that's exactly what's happening in this horrific case. And let's not forget that this is all about the victim here, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. So I will see you guys over the next one as we continue these text message readouts.